You saw the school manager asked me if he had to find her. Okay. And
Can you read it upside down?
that's
And so we get these.
talk about cancer. Because of the time, there was
So let's do a little.
you want they pretty ones. They
I don't know. We tried to, I was trying to make it me. This one, and we got one up there. And she just said, "Some things that you have to go on." I don't want to,
no,
we did a lot of practice, so. She got these little straight. So down. I did help her. I never put out. Yeah.
Water from
Yeah.
it tastes awesome.
All right, young scholars, this evening we're going to cover JavaScript. We may go a little longer than usual today because we're going to have more HTML examples using JavaScript. I want to remind you that we have quite a bit to do in preparation of next week's class, our last class meeting, which will be face-to-face. So first, you're going to have this JavaScript assignment. I kind of mentioned this at the end of class last week, where you're basically just asked to explain what this code does. I showed you last week. When you click on the link button, it popped up this actual web page in a new window with the 300 height and the 700 width. Additionally, your project is due Monday night, which is your website that you've created. Most of you are using Wix or in Dylan's case, he's using Weebly.
Have a good one.
Additionally, you're going to submit your PowerPoint that you're going to present from next week. So as I mentioned last week, make sure that you bring in your own laptop to present from next week. I'll have the HDMI cord rather to plug in the front. You'll just sit in the front podium there and present your website. And then if you so choose, you could go ahead and do that podcast assignment early if you want to. And those are the last 4 things needed to do for the semester. So tonight we're going to cover JavaScript. We mentioned some of this stuff last week, so I may go through some of these slides quicker than others. So as I mentioned last week, JavaScript is embedded within HTML code using the script tags. With cascading style sheets, you'll remember that it was .css. With JavaScript, .js is the file extension. And as we talked about last week, functions make up the majority of JavaScript. And you could use if statements to execute different conditions within JavaScript. And just like with Java, you comment out a single line of code using // So as I touched on last week, JavaScript is like Java. It uses functions. It's interpreted by the browser, though not compiled like a Java program would be. So it's operating system and browser, for the most part, independent. JavaScript allows for different portability and reusability. You can have a .js file saved into a folder on your web page and use it for multiple web pages. And to reference an external JavaScript page, you would do script source equals within quotes, whatever the name of your file is, and then close out the script tag. So we talked about the divider and span way back probably in September. So here's just a reminder that the div tag gives you the ability to identify particular sections, and the span tag allows you to use the same, but also add style, class, and ID attributes. In essence, they'll help you just divide and break up the different sections of your page. So as I mentioned last week, JavaScript is basically client-side code execution. You can create it and use it, and it works on your end. So in this example code here, script, write our first JavaScript, that would simply add the words our first JavaScript into a new HTML file. So here's a basic example of some JavaScript code. And I'll copy that and show you how it works. So if you were to run this code, we have this script source JavaScript folder /scripts.js. So what do you think is going to happen when you click this button that says click me? Anyone? Let's try it. Up. We clicked it, nothing happened. How come? Well, because we don't know exactly where this JavaScript file is. If we knew the exact location and put in the full URL, it would run whatever my first function is within that JavaScript file. So let's say my first function was just adding 3 and 5. If you were to click me, it would come up with text that showed 3 + 5 is 8. But in this example, if you were to click that button, it would pop up an alert. Our test works. The click me button worked. So I talked about this last week on clicks. When you click something, something happens. And I showed you or provided that YouTube video in last week's folder about an on-click on a website where if you were to click the size text, it would make the text bigger or smaller depending on what you clicked on. So here's an on-click example. We'll go ahead and change or utilize that. So the same idea. Each button on click does something specific. Change the div value, change the div value back, overrules what you did with the first button, and then change the entire document would allow you to modify the entire document. So can everybody see this? Hopefully.
Hey, where'd you go? Let's go.
So the div change modifies whatever the size of your divider is within your HTML code. Then that second button changes it back, reverts it back to whatever specifically you had it set up initially as. And then that function doc change would simply add the text document has changed to your HTML file. So here's another example where if you were to click that button, switch button, it would modify the style. It would modify your text to make it justify. So you'll notice here the change in the justifications. So again, the idea is whenever you click something, the modification, you click, on the click, something happens. A function is executed. Whatever the block of code you're using changes, initiates something to occur. So when you do your JavaScript, the function syntax is function, and then whatever your name of the function is, your parentheses, then your brackets, and whatever the code you need within your function. So in this example, function, my addition function, your parameters are A and B, return A and B. So it's adding two numbers together. As we touched on before, just like Java, the // comments out a single line. However, if you want to comment out multiple lines, you would do /*, put whatever your comments are. Could be 3 lines, 4 lines, 8 lines, whatever it may be. And then asterisk and close it out. So that document function we've been talking about previously, as you've seen, will allow us to add or write information, edit information into our HTML file. So just like within Java, you can use different variables within JavaScript. So here we have a variable foo equals the string A, variable bar equals the string B. So instead of int x or string foo, it's just var, short for variable. So in this example here, just like Java, your variables are only used or available within that specific function, unless you use inheritance, polymorphism, etc. Just like with Java, you have these same operators available: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, increment, decrement, checking to see if two are equal, checking to see if they're not equal, greater than, less than, greater than, equals, greater than, or less than equals, rather, too. Here are additional operators you can use in JavaScript, the same as you did in Java as well. So just like Java, you can use if statements and other conditional statements within JavaScript. So here's an example. If our first name value equals, then we're going to ask for the first name. When we're trying to find our last name, then we're going to ask for the last name. If the alert string has no string to add to it, then we don't need to pop out the alert string. Once we enter our first and last name, they're added into our document. The AJAX is a combination. It's an asynchronous JavaScript combined with XML. So asynchronous allows time for the server to process the request and returns the results when complete. So it may take a little bit of time before it completes or finishes what it needs to process. So you've all heard of cookies, right? Cookie is that information stored on your computer. Once you visit a website, it's a small piece of data. It stores on your browser. It's basically what is used when you go on a website. It's stored on your computer. It takes less and less time for you to load a web page based on those cookies and cache stored on your website or your browser that you're using. So when you're creating a cookie using JavaScript, you're going to want a name, a value, the expiration date, the path, where is it being stored, the domain, its security, and you might have other small amounts of information required within it. So to set a cookie, you can assign an appropriate value to document.cookie. And here's an example of a function called setCookie that would create a cookie and set a certain expiration date for the cookie. So the variable expires, it's set to a new date object. The date object is created with no date or time. This allows us to no, Dan, next week. This is the last lecture. And then next week we're presenting your websites in class.
Great.
No problem. So in essence, what that previous function did, as you see here, was created a new cookie on a website that's now going to set an expiration date, maybe 7 days, maybe 30 days before it expires. So if you wanted to get a cookie instead of setting one, it would be a little different. You'll notice here that instead of creating an expiration date, we're going to find it. We're looking for it. Where is the cookie? Try to find the length. We try to find it within an index. Where is it? So based on your Java experience, tell me what would happen here with this function, my while function, A and B, if we assign the number 2 to A and the number 8 to B. Do you know what would happen?
It would be while counter is less than or equal to 8.
Okay.
Because the B is assigned to the 8. So then I, which is equal to 1, at this point equals I times A, which is assigned to 2, and then the counter is added. Well, that value is added to the counter, and then you return back to the I value.
Okay. So when this is all done, what does I equal?
Okay.
It starts at
8.
1. The counter will continue to go until it's greater than 8. So how many times will it run?
It'll run until it reaches 16.
It'll run until B is 8. So each time it runs, it returns I and changes I. So the first time I equals I times 2. So
So
1 times
that's
2 is 2.
And then the next time it reaches 4, and then the next time it reaches 8, but still less than or equal to 8, because equal to that still we want to run more time, right?
The counter
Yeah.
has to be less than or equal to 8, not I.
So we'll run 8 times is
The
what you're saying.
counter will run 8 times. So what is I?
256.
$256 is Dylan's guess. And Dylan is correct. So it's going to run 8 times. So the first time, 1 times 2, that's 2. The second time, so in essence, it's 2 to the 8th power, which is 256. So we'll talk more about XML in the advanced class in the spring. But in essence, XML works pretty well with JavaScript because XML allows you to store data and information. So if you're using functions with JavaScript, you may have a bunch of different numbers or strings that you need to store, so you can store them within an XML file. Hopefully this runs. So here's an example, and hopefully it works. No, of course not. So in this example, you would be allowed to create an address book using data from your XML file. But the code, unfortunately, isn't running because we don't have that scripts dot saved anywhere. So there are some problems when you're using cookies, though. Some browsers can overwrite. So let's say you go to ESPN and it's now saved on your website or your computer, rather. Other individuals, just like if you had a database, can do what is called SQL injection, where they basically store fake information or information that's spoofing, it's not real, but it's pretending to be, that's going to steal information from your computer. So here's an example on Click. In this example, we're going to display the date and time. So if we click on this button, click me to display date and time, it's calling this get element ID in order to provide us with the date. So it gives us the exact date. Today's Tuesday, December 5th. It's 5:53 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And even gave you to the second. So every time you click this, it's going to change that date. So it gives you the full date here because we're using that entire date function. So comparatively speaking, when you compare JavaScript to the other topics we've covered, HTML, cascading style sheets, HTML is used to define the content of the web pages, CSS specifies the layout, and JavaScript allows you to change the behavior of your specific website. So here's another example. In this instance, we said instead of date and time, we just said the time is. And when we click that button, we would be given the same information. So we run the code, and the same thing happens when we click the time is. We get that output. So again, on click. On your click, something happens. In this example, something different happens. So you notice here, I'll put them side by side. Do you notice the difference in between the two types of code?
I don't care. I'm gonna put that.
So in this first example, we're creating this button within the document itself. In the second example, we're creating an instance. So you may remember this function from Java, hopefully. So when you click on that on click, instead of adding it to the document, it's going to create itself as a button. So with that previous example, it outputted the information onto the document as just text. In this example, on the on click, it now becomes that button because we're using the this function from Java. So we talked on these last week about these different types of elements or functions that are commonly used. Obviously, we've talked about on-click quite a bit, on mouse over, on mouse out, on key down, on load are the most common ones. So just like within Java, JavaScript allows us to use arrays, booleans, the math class, the random class, objects, functions, and different assignments. But instead of, string and int, as you saw, it's just var for variable. There's even a whole community available online for you guys to visit, the JavaScript community. Any questions? There's even tutorials there for you guys to look through. And you may have seen these are kind of outdated, but JSP, Java Server Pages. There's servlets, information. You used to go on websites and they would have the little Java box pop up with the little cup of coffee, with the little steam coming off of it to indicate that a servlet was running on the web page. So obviously, since it's a servlet, it's server-side web technology and requires you, just like PHP, to have Apache Tomcat installed on your server. So a servlet is compiled code used to deliver content through an HTTP protocol. They're usually reliant on APIs, like Java has an API, Google has an API, where you can use already predetermined or existing code in order to enhance what you need. The difference between the two is that Java servlet pages are geared more towards rendering content, getting a page to show up, whereas servlets are better suited for processing since they are pre-compiled. You already have that information. I'll touch on model view controller, but it's quite a bit boring. So the model is your business model, which houses all of the logic. The view is whatever you're seeing, that application. The controller is what keeps them together. And then the spring and struts are two popular model view controllers that are used within those applications. So they all work together. From a coding perspective, the difference is that with servlets, you're writing Java code and then it's embedded or interpreted from the client. Whereas Java Server Pages, you start with the client side, then embed different tags in order to connect everything on the back end. So the servlet, everything's all in one. Java Server Pages, you might have 2 or 3 different files required to run that specific code. And here's a simple comparison of the JSP versus everyone else. I'm not going to read all of them, but active server pages, servlets, server side includes, JavaScript itself, and static HTML are all quite different than the Java server pages. So just like you have within your Java code, JavaScript allows us different functions to set HTTP status codes. So you have public void set status, public void send redirect, public void send error. Oh, okay, this page doesn't exist. We're going to send a 404 error, is what that public void send error function would do. So you have these different applications you may use for a servlet. And again, I'm not going to cover all of them. You can see all of them there and read them for yourself. But visually, the HTTP client, your browser, is the client side. It sends a request over to the server in order to get information. And then the response is sent back. Just like when you're going to a web page, you type in the URL, you wait for it to load. The same thing with JavaScript and these different servlets. Okay? The page is sending it. Okay? It's interpreting it and loading it back in your browser. So when you're creating different functions, you may have it go through, in essence, its life cycle. So the init function is the initiation of your JavaScript. Okay, initiation, it starts. Then you could use the public void destroy function, which is going to stop it. You initialize it, it does whatever it needs to do within that code, and then you're going to stop it. Think of it like an if-else statement. Okay, it checks for one thing. Okay, if this exists, it does it, whatever the code says to do. Otherwise, it does something else, and then the program's done. Similar to JavaScript. Okay, we initialized our code. We did whatever it needed to do. It's done. Now we go ahead and use that public void destroy function to stop. And like I said, that's all tied to the life cycle of a servlet. We do something, then we stop our servlet. It's done, it's over. So the initialize starts it, the destroy stops it. It did what it needed to do, so now it's done. GUIs are another aspect, graphical user interface, that are kind of outdated like Java server pages and servlets, but it allows you to display objects that convey information and may even represent actions that you can take as the user. So here's an example of how you might want to create a multiplication table, which you could kind of claim as a GUI since it's a visual representation. So we have a 9x9 multiplication table here. 9 times 9 is 81. So we could have a prompt set up that allows us to input both of that. How many columns do you want? How many rows do you want? So I entered 9 and 9, and it gave me that specific multiplication. So on slide 56, if you were to click the notes button there, the code for that is within the notes, where you copy that. And I'll talk through the code here. If it will load. No, of course, my screen is freezing. And it completely knocked out Firefox. That's not good. There we go. So when we run the code, it asks us for our number of rows. I typed in 9. Then it asks for the number of columns. I asked for 9. And it prints out that display of the table, which is what this document.write output function is doing. It's taking in those two parameters and continuing to build the table based on whatever our output was. So once our info is popped in, it sets that number of rows. So whatever number I put in, 2, 8, 7, as long as it's less than 10 for each of them. So if I put in 11 by 11, it overwrites that though. Similarly, you could create, like we did earlier in the semester, a form using JavaScript. But you'll notice that the code is a little bit different. It's all within one space here. And if we don't enter in our information, it gives us an error message. Please enter. Where is it? Please enter the info. Which is what we have set up as all of these error messages. That validate function, we confirm whether our information is put in or not. Otherwise, we populate one of these error messages from our array. So we match name with first name, last name with last name, email with email, user ID with user ID, and password, etc. So lastly, we can create our own little pop-up if we chose to. If we copied the code from slide 60 through 63, we're going to create an on-click example. This doesn't show up too great based on where I have the left set up. So let me change that to 150. So now, when I hover over with my mouse onto that text that says welcome, it's going to utilize that trigger function, and it's going to pop up an alert that says welcome to my web page. You see within that trigger function here, we've set a hover using mouse over. We've created the pop-up. So we could always change that alert and be like, Dylan, wake up. And now we run it. And if we have the scroll over welcome now, it pops up the new message. Dylan, wake up. So as I mentioned before, JavaScript is interpreted, not compiled like Java is. Again, you're going to utilize JavaScript externally if you want, using the script source, whatever the file name is, and then type JavaScript, close out the JavaScript code. You're going to store it in a .js file. So as you just saw previously, the most common use of JavaScript is with form validation. You didn't put information in that form, you had all those errors pop up in red text. You can embellish or add special effects to your web page, You can utilize it for different navigation systems, changing the scroll bar, etc. Utilizing it for basic math calculations. And I'm sure you've even seen it using different widgets on your MacBook, Google Maps, Philips Universal Remotes, word processors, etc. So here's an example adding two numbers. What's the first number I should enter in? Anyone?
3,
3? What's the second number I should add?
4,
So what should the display be?
7. Sum equals 7.
Yep. We have this alert. Sum is in our little string text box here, plus sum, just like you would see in JavaScript. Sum equals, and then whatever our variable is, 3 plus 4. Sum equals 7. What do you think would happen if I put letters in instead of numbers?
The program may not continue.
Let's try it. A, B. Sum equals nan. What does that mean? What do you think nan stands for?
Probably like not a number.
Very good. So that's because we added A plus B. Now in regular Java and in Excel, it may concatenate those and just, okay, your output is AB. Just combine the two together. So here's an example of a browser event. Each on-click has a different event. If you click with the left mouse, you click the left mouse button, appears as an alert. You click with the right mouse, you click the right mouse button, appears as an alert. So that's basically an on-mouse event. So you could have on-mouse move, something happens, you move your mouse. As you just saw, you could have a mouse over, you can have an on-click. On-key press would apply to clicking a key on your keyboard. Page manipulation examples include creating an element, creating text, adding specific items to your web page, which all ties back to the document object model we talked about last week. So in this line of code, var new item equals document.create element li, what are we doing there?
Creating a list element.
Yep, we're creating a new list. And then we could have var new text equals document.create text node. Text could add specific text, to that list. So we talked about document object model last week, but those basically are our common functions that we may want to use or change. Among them include document.alink color, which would create a function that would change the active link color. We could use document.url, document.forms, document.links, document.anchors, etc. to all find information within our HTML code. So the most common program within Java is called hello world. So here's an example of how that would look within JavaScript. We just used the document.write function to output hello world to our web page. We set it as header 1. So just like we did with the mouse over, we can modify this as we need to. So we could change, instead of hello world, Eva stop gaming, and then run that. And that is written to our web page using that document.write function. And we could similarly just set it as a paragraph instead of header 1 and run it. When we're using numbers, we can use the similar properties that we've touched on in Java code. So Dylan probably looked ahead and saw that that nan meant not a number. It results from invalid computations. So think of like an error you get within Excel. There might be a div 0 error pop up because you can't divide by 0. It gives you an error. So you can utilize different objects or functions within JavaScript. Max value is roughly 10 to the 308th power. Min value is roughly 10 to the negative 324th power. You could even have positive infinity and negative infinity. You can also convert different items using functions. ToString converts a number to a string with an optional base. So you might or might not have the base parameter within your parentheses. You could use the toFixed function. Fixed point real with given number digits past decimal. ToExponential, cover a number in scientific notation. And toPrecision, floating point real. You could have any number of decimal places as opposed to an int or integer, which does not allow you to have any decimal places. You could also use different functions to check specific true or false expressions. So isNaN, whatever the expression is it true? Is it not a number? If it's not a number, it will return true. If it is a number, what will it return? If it is a number, it's checking to see
It's
if
gonna
it's
return
not a
false.
number. It will return false. Yep. Our Booleans, remember? It's either true or false, one or the other. Similarly, with the isFinite function, it'll only return true if whatever your parameter is neither not a number nor infinity. It's something, it's an actual number, 73, 28.6. Then just like Java, there are also all of these different math functions and methods that you can use. Math.e for exponent, logarithm, pi, square root, absolute value, cosine, sine, tangent, the floor, the logarithm, the max and min, the power, random numbers. You could round a number, square root a number. And then in the same way, the same string functions are available to you with JavaScript. You can check where a specific character is. You can concatenate or combine them. Like I said, normally, if you were to add A and B together, it would just be AB. You can match, check to see if specific things are the same. You can replace or search for certain items. You can split, break them apart. So this isn't as common today as it is in yesteryear with Edge replacing Microsoft, Internet Explorer. But some older browsers may not recognize script tags. So they'll ignore the script tags, but display the JavaScript in its place. So in order to do that, we work around it with this little less than sign, exclamation point, dash, dash, in order to, in essence, hide our JavaScript as an HTML comment. This way, the browser then interprets it correctly as JavaScript. So Dylan, you have Java programming now, right? Did you get to exception handling yet?
I'm not doing Java now.
What do you
It's
do?
Python.
Python?
I do Python at FDU.
Python. Okay. So within exception handling, very similar to Java with JavaScript. You try to find any exception that may occur, then you catch it. You prevent it from happening. So the most common exception handling issue with regular Java is an input mismatch. You have a program, it asks for a number, and you input a string. It'll give you an input mismatch error. No, we wanted a number. Please enter a number in order to prevent you from creating any kind of issue. So in that previous Kodai example, if I had exception handling set up, it wouldn't have allowed me to put in A and B as numbers. It would have populated an error. Oh, no, A isn't a number. Please enter a number. So here's an example of that in JavaScript code. Okay, you put in your try, whatever you're looking for to catch. Okay, the first catch. If we catch it, something happens to prevent it. And you may have one specific catch, you may have multiple specific catches. Think of it like a switch statement in Java programming. Okay, if we do this, otherwise we do that, otherwise we do that, otherwise we do that. And there's multiple different opportunities. Unlike an if else where it's peanut butter or jelly. You may have specific warnings that may pop up with JavaScript. So it's a big, complex language, just like Java. However, as you saw, a lot of browsers aren't designed to report errors. I showed you last week how Firefox is the most common one when you want to check to see that some code is running, actually works, because it actually has report handling available. So you have different types of JavaScript pop-ups you may create. The most common one we've seen so far is an alert box. It's used to make sure that information comes through to the user. So it'll just pop up, you click an OK button, it disappears, you go on to your web page as you need. So here's an example. And we'll run that code. And hopefully no issues. This is a little wonky today. So what do you think is going to happen when I click the try it button? We're calling this my function using that button.
It's going to pop up the alert that says I'm an alert box.
Yep, So this my function calls this function here. Alert, I am an alert box. So we have this alert pop up. I am an alert box. So in order to get rid of it, we simply click OK. So the second kind is a confirm box. It's often used when you want to verify or accept something. So instead of just an OK option, you'll have both an OK or a cancel option. So if you click OK, it goes through, does what it needs to do. If you click cancel, it may not let you proceed. It may load a different screen. So the following slide 22, we'll copy that code to show you that example. So now what do you think is going to happen when you click try it?
You're gonna get that pop-up top box that says press a button, and there's gonna be an OK and a cancel button on it, and it will give you different text depending on what you click.
Yep. So again, we're calling that my function. The button just says try it. We click the button. It gives us this option. Press a button. OK or cancel. And whichever one you click now outputs that message. So if the text, you clicked OK, you pressed OK. If you click cancel, it'll tell you you pressed cancel. So I go ahead, I try it again, try it. I click cancel, you pressed cancel. So I could change what the button says. Instead of try it, I could change it to say, what game is Eva playing? And instead of okay, we could do Call of Duty for okay. And instead of cancel, we can play, what's another game that's common? Sims? Do people still play Sims? No? I'll just put it in. Sims is the other option. So when we run that now, we click the button, what game is Eva playing? If we click OK, we get the message that says Call of Duty. If we click cancel, we get the message Sims. And this document.getElementById.innerHTML equals text is what is putting that text into our web page, similar to the document.write. And the last type is a prompt box. So it's often used when you want input. So you might have a prompt box pop up. You might have an OK or a cancel. You might have different information you need to put in. So if the user clicks OK, the box will return the input value. If the user clicks cancel, the box returns a null or an empty value, a missing value. So here's an example of the prompt box. So what do you think is going to happen when I run this code?
It's gonna create a button that's called try it. That will run your function. That will have a please enter your name prompt. and then said prompt will say hello plus person, which would be the text that you input, and then how are you today?
So it's not going to output this Harry Potter?
That's going to be in the text box, like as a oh wait, it's just going to have that as the value.
No, that's going to be your what is called a toast in app development. It's basically a suggestion. This way, you know, hey, even though it says please enter your name, you don't know if that just means first name, last name. By giving that Harry Potter, it basically tells you, oh, we want the full name. So we can overwrite it. We put in Dylan's name, we click OK. Then it outputs, hello, Dylan Hoppy, how are you today? Which is our else statement, our text. And again, we use that document.get element by ID .inner HTML equals text in order to post that text onto our web page. If we were to do try it and then just click cancel, it says user canceled the prompt, which refers to our initial if statement. So we could change the button to say, you know, what is Dylan's favorite color? And then we change the text to please enter Dylan's favorite color. We could change Harry Potter to be orange. And we could change the display to Dylan's favorite color is. And then instead of how are you, we could change that to, is it your favorite color too? And then we run that now. And our button name changed from try it to what is Dylan's favorite color. We click that. We're asked, please enter Dylan's favorite color. Now, instead of Harry Potter as the example, it gives us orange. So let's say Dylan's favorite color is blue, and we click OK. It outputs Dylan's favorite color is, with a space, blue, which was our variable we inputted, and then is it your favorite color too? Yeah, obviously, based on your change, you would probably change the variable person to color, but that's neither here nor there. So if you wanted to have multiple inputs, you'd have to change your code a little bit. So in this example, we're setting two different variables instead of just one. What's your favorite color? What's your second favorite color? And then instead of using that inner element, we use the document.write function. We output whatever the first input is, then a space in between, then whatever the second color is. So instead of having a button prompt, we now just have a straight up prompt. So favorite color, blue. Second favorite color, let's say purple. And then when we click OK, blue, purple. We can modify the code slightly and put an and in between if we wanted to. So now we do blue and purple again. And now it tells us blue and purple. Instead of the ampersand for and, we can type the word and in. Now it's blue and purple. We can modify the code to say is slightly better than. Then when we add blue and purple, it now has blue for our first favorite color, purple for our second favorite color, with that text is slightly better than in between. So your prompt is basically set whatever your variable is going to be. So you may have a variable instead of fav color, you might change it to be let's say Dylan's favorite Pokemon. So Pokemon 1, Pokemon 2. And then modify below as well. And then our prompt, instead of what is your favorite color, is now going to be what is Dylan's favorite Pokemon. How about Dylan's second favorite Pokemon? Then we have to modify within our write function the name that we changed our variables to. So now when we run this, we're asked, what is Dylan's favorite Pokemon? What's your favorite Pokemon, Dylan?
I'll just name one. What about Jigglypuff? We'll do that.
Yeah. Jigglypuff. All right. How about Dylan's second favorite Pokemon?
Let's do Lucario.
That?
Yeah, sure.
So now our output is Jigglypuff is slightly better than Lucario. Because of our document.write, that function, we first write out our first variable. Within quotes, we have a space set up, is slightly better than, then another space, and then our second variable. And then lastly is that JavaScript pop-up, which I showed you guys last week, and is the JavaScript assignment, where you're going to tell me what this code does here. So I'll pop it into the editor again, just to remind you, so it makes it easier on yourself. So you have this text, click here to visit my website, which is using a basic pop-up. So once I click that text, it's going to create a pop-up of this specific website listed here. A new page with the height of 300 and the width of 700, and it's going to pop up 50 pixels from the left and 50 pixels from the top. It's going to allow us to be resizable because yes, it's going to still have the scroll bar on that pop-up due to yes. So we click it, it pops up. 50 pixels from the left, 50 pixels from the top. It's not loading for whatever reason, but it would have the toolbars here. It allows us to resize by clicking, etc. It allows us to close. So that's the JavaScript assignment. You're going to write in a Word document or text document explaining what all of this does. So that is the JavaScript assignment. Should take you maybe 5-10 minutes to do. Then again, there's project. All of this is due next Monday night. So the JavaScript assignment, the project is your website. So when you click here on project, and create submission, all you have to do here is post that web link. So for Dylan's, it's what, dylanhoppy.md or hoppymd.com or something.
Yeah.
So that's all you would need to do for your project, your website, when you submit it. It's just post the URL link. So you're going to be graded on, does the website look visually appealing? Did you include the deliverables from your proposal? Does it look like you followed your process and cost? And what did you involve from the course? Do you have CSS, HTML? Is there a form, JavaScript, etc.? And then next week, we're all going to meet in class. Like I said, I'll bring the HDMI cord to plug into the front. You'll sit in a little podium at the front. You'll plug your laptop in. You'll give your presentation. You're going to submit that PowerPoint that you're going to use beforehand, because the 50 points out of the 100 points for the presentation is what you have in that PowerPoint. So basically, I'll have half of your presentation graded before you even get to class. So you're going to want to have an intro slide with your name and info, slides describing the project proposal, slides describing the project, or you could pull up the website itself and explain the different pages, and slides describing any issues you had. Your presentation should be as close to 10 minutes as possible without going over. Keep in mind that I might ask a question, your classmates might ask a question. So you want it to be as professional as you can. You know, avoid swaying of arms, toe tapping, any other distractions. Instead of doing just pause, collect your thoughts, and start again, and keep eye contact with your audience. It's going to be your other students and myself. I'll be sitting in the audience as well. No problem, Dan. What folder is it in? I think it's in this one. So in the 9.5 folder, this examples of project PowerPoints for presentation link will take you to examples of what you can do with that. I think I showed you these last week.
Professor?
Yes.
Yeah, when is the Java assignment due?
JavaScript assignment is also due on Monday.
Okay.
So all three of those are due Monday, 11:59 p.m. But like I said, the JavaScript, it's just submitting a Word file explaining what occurs here. I basically just showed you guys that when you run it, you click, it creates that pop-up. So we're setting the link to pop up. We're setting the text here. Click here to visit my website. And this function implements that pop-up. So it creates the pop-up window using that URL, 300 pixels in height, 700 pixels in width, 50 pixels from the left, 50 pixels from the top. But it allows us to resize, etc. You could include all of that when you submit your answer to the JavaScript assignment. JavaScript assignment project, which is your website, you're submitting just the URL. Project presentation, you're submitting your PowerPoint, And here are the examples. Like I said, the link is in the 9.5 folder. So some students just, basically their PowerPoint was primarily nothing but their proposal and then their problem or any issues they had. And they simply opened up their website and went through it and talked about it. While others may have literally included every page on their website while talking through it. Either way is completely fine with me, as long as you're in that 10-minute ballpark. And so other than that, the only other assignment for this semester is in next week's folder. It's that podcast assignment where you're just going to answer those 4 or 5 questions I posed. What folder was it? The 14th? I think it might have been in the 14th, the second PowerPoint slide, more on web promotion. At the end of that is a bunch of slides that have recommendations for different Apple podcasts you can listen to, or you can Google and find them as you so choose. So those are the last 4 assignments for the semester. The JavaScript assignment and the podcast assignment are homework assignments. They're each 5% each. The website and presentation are obviously much more. Let's double check what they are worth here. So the website itself or the project is 25%. The presentation is 20%. So basically, next week, if you've already submitted that podcast assignment and I've graded it, and you submit the JavaScript assignment by Monday night, I graded it. I'll have the website graded. In essence, like I said, if you submitted that podcast assignment early, basically by the time you're done presenting, you'll have a general idea of what your final grade is for the class. And if you're still stuck on the website, on that blog that pops up, here are some, basically just use the free version of Wix for what you're going to do. And then the project examples, if you scroll down to the bottom, are the most recent ones that kind of give you a general idea of what we're looking for here. It doesn't have to be any kind of advanced website. We'll probably do the advanced websites in the spring course if I can have that set up the way I'd like. The info 2106, but we'll see what happens there. I'm not entirely sure if they'll let me set it up that way, because having students buy their own website, you may need permission for that. So again, these 3 are all due Monday night, and then the podcast assignment won't be due until the 18th, but you're more than welcome to do it early since we won't be meeting on the 19th. Next week with this presentation will be it. Okay, so are there any questions regarding any of that?
Yeah, I just had one question, Professor.
Okay, go ahead, Rob.
So based on our proposal, like let's say we got a little ambitious in the proposal and run into a problem where we can't execute the right way. Like if it looks different or we execute different than what we say, do we just explain that in the PowerPoint?
Yep. So that slide where you had the slides describing any issues, you'd be like, oh, okay, I wanted to do this, but here's why I didn't end up doing it. I ran into the XYZ problem, And, you know, you may have decided to do something instead. That's perfectly fine.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Are there any other questions? No, we still got it done in time. It was around 7 o'clock like we usually end. I was thinking we were going to go a little longer today. All right, so if there are no other questions, again, like I said, make sure that you have your laptop ready to go. Start of class next week. I don't know how I'll do it. I may just ask for volunteers to go first, and if that doesn't work, maybe I'll just start calling on people.
Professor, I got a question.
All right, go ahead, Dan.
So for the presentation, right? Knowing that we have to like do a whole website, are we gonna have to like show the class the website or just PowerPoint's presentation?
So that's this point here. You could do it either way. You could have slides describing your project where you
Okay.
just like show a couple pictures, or you can actually pull up the website itself and click on it and be like, oh, this is this page, this is that page, etc. So either or is entirely up to you.
All right.
And in that example in the 9.5 folder, if you click on that link to see the examples, you'll notice that some people just had the link in their PowerPoint to click and open and show, while others just had like pictures of each of the pages and talked about them. All right, if there are no other questions, I'll see everybody next week. Enjoy
good-
your evening.
Have a good evening.
Take care.